Hi everyone, thank you once again for joining another episode in the Beyond Ordinary series. Now, I know we have been having some really intense conversations when it comes to masculinity and femininity, and I wanted to continue on this path simply because I think a lot of the concerns and issues that arise or stem or you know develop in relationships often do so from a place of not understanding each other. And there's a book somewhere that says um, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And at first I thought, what, this is just another author just trying to get some attention. But the reality for me later became one that was so profound, because we are indeed from two different worlds. As much as it may seem that we are not, because we are all a part of the human race and the human species. Sometimes I do believe that we are from different planets and different universe, sometimes different time zones. And that was one of the drivers behind the masculinity versus femininity discussion and conversation. And I wanted to continue it simply because I do think there is a wide array of dichotomy when it comes to the topics and conversation pieces and provocative thought that can develop when you look at the varying issues that arise when it comes to masculinity and femininity. And this week is no different. This week I intend to look at a very interesting topic. I think a lot of persons will want to dive a little deeper in it. Not necessarily here on this channel, but certainly within their everyday lives. So today I'm looking at common law union, what it means to protecting yourself when you don't have a ring or when you have not been proposed to. Now, as you know, I'm an attorney at law, but I'm not taking this from the point of view of an attorney. I won't be giving you the legislative frameworks that govern what common law is and how to go about doing all of that. That's not my intent, because of course, we have jurisdictional consideration when it comes to YouTube. Of course, I have to keep it very general in a sense so that everybody understands what it is to be in a common law union, or in a union that is not framed by legal marriage, for those of us who are not within the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth jurisdictions, right? So I'm going to keep it very general, albeit I'll try to point in the direction where additional legal guidance is required, but I certainly will not be touching on it here. And if ever you want to have a discussion on it, feel free. You can DM me, you can message me, and we can take it off air. So for this week, as I mentioned, I want to look at common law unions and what it means to protect yourself if you don't have a ring or if you have not been proposed to. But before I get into all of the nitty-gritty of it, let me just define what a common law union is. So a common law union is considered to be one that is a visiting relationship, one that you have been in for a particular period of time, that you may be contributing to the relationship financially or non-financially. Now, the idea behind it is that a lot of women, far more so than males, have been in these unions or visiting relationships, and at the end of the day are left with absolutely no protection, no rights, no property, no financing. And it has often been something that has caused quite some tension between ex-spouses or, ex-visiting relating partners, as the case may be. So the idea behind this particular discussion is that whether you are 2 years in or you're 10 years in, it is time for you to secure your future. And it's not about being a gold digger. It's not about going for something that you did not put down. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about those instances where persons legitimately contribute to a relationship, and at the end of the relationship, either by virtue of some mutual departure or instances where a spouse may have passed on to the other side, they are left with absolutely nothing. And at the same time, life goes on, and you have to find some way to navigate life as you know it to be. So as I said, whether you are living with somebody for 2 years, 10 years, or more, the idea behind it is that you have to protect your future, whatever that looks like, ring or no ring. You have to protect your future. So living without marriage or without a ring or without some form of proposal does not mean that you are unprotected. It doesn't mean that you're unprotected. But what it does mean is that you are requiring a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more insight, and a little bit more manner of being smart, right? And that is ultimately what it means to be married in a common law situation, or not necessarily to be married, but to be cohabiting in a common law situation or a visiting relationship where there is no ring. So as you can imagine, in this episode, my intention is to provide you with some breakdown as to how to protect your rights and what you should do if your partner has not made it official, right? And I want to look at this from a number of places. I want to look at, first and foremost, what counts as a common law relationship. What property and financial rights do you have as an unmarried couple? What steps you can take to protect yourself legally and financially? And what happens if your relationship ends or your partner passes away? So let us look at what is in general, regardless of your jurisdiction, regardless of where you're living, the common understanding of what a common law union is, or what is considered in most countries worldwide to be a visiting relationship. So it is said that if you live together in a marriage-like relationship for several years, and as I said, depending on where you're living, depending on the country, there may be a limitation to it, right? But we're just going to keep it general. And you are in a marriage-like relationship for several years, then you are recognized in general to be in a common law situation or what is called a visiting relationship. Now, under these circumstances, the understanding in such unions is that finances are shared, the home is shared, oftentimes children are involved, right? And there is some amount of commitment, some levels of commitment that is attached to this union. And because there is some amount of commitment that is attached to the union, at the end of the relationship, be it in life or in death, the living party, the surviving spouse, has to be protected some way, either by law or by measures taken in general, right? And why is it that getting these rights and these protection, why is it that it is important? Because not having a status, not understanding where you fall outside of a legal marriage can create a lot of issues when it comes to property, inheritance, maintenance, overall, even though you would have spent so many years with this person. So it is important for you to also realize that while you have committed to the relationship and committed to the individual and committed financially and in some instances non-financially based on your contribution to the relationship, you are not automatically recognized. It's not an automatic recognition. And this is more so in jurisdictions that are based on the common law legal system, right? But at the same time, because there is cohabitation happening, then there has to be some amount of protection of your financial and property rights and other beneficial rights that you are required or entitled to. So how does one protect themselves in situations where the relationship has ended, either in life or in death? So without a legal marriage, as I mentioned before, your partner's property and finances won't necessarily automatically pass to you, right? But there are ways that you can, there are ways and oftentimes steps that you can take to ensure that there is some benefit or ownership over some things. Two of the most important ones that I will list here, as I said, this is not information that is to guide your legal process. This is just information to give you in general, just general information to allow you to understand that while you're living, there are things that you can do to protect yourself in life with your partner before you actually go your separate ways. And one of them is that it is important to put properties in both of your names. Now, why is this important? It is important because when you have this kind of union or situation and you're not just, coexisting, you're actually cohabitating, and there's a difference between the two that must be separately understood. It is important to know that if you're contributing to the relationship, either financially or non-financially, that at the end of the day, assets that are acquired within the union are acquired for both parties. So if you buy a piece of land, for instance, or you buy a house, or you purchase a car together, especially for these major assets, ensure that the titles, the deeds, and the registrations have both of your names on them. Because this is one of the ways to protect yourself, and albeit it is one of the simplest ways and the strongest of them to prove that you have some foot and bearing into ownership, right? The second thing that I would suggest or recommend outside of the legal, things that can happen to protect yourself is while you're in your relationship with your visiting partner or your common law partner, is to try to keep records that indicate or would otherwise evidence your contribution to the relationship. So if you hold high value assets, my recommendation is to keep receipts, keep your invoices, keep your bank transfers, keep your WhatsApp messages. We're in a digital age where a lot of things are communicated via WhatsApp and maybe sometimes email. But keep these things as part and parcel of your proof of your ownership to these particular properties, right? And in other instances, ensure that for assets that have a beneficiary component, that if the conversation is happening, that you two are also having the conversations to be a beneficiary, as the case may be. So in the masculinity versus femininity dichotomy, my recommendation is always to approach this as serious as you can. And at times you may not want to, because you are being elevated on the cloud of what we know to be emotional feelings, emotional connection, and even what we call love, right? But sometimes along and some part of your relationship journey, it is important for you to stop and stick a pin into the relationship and have the hard conversation so as to ensure that you're protecting your rights and your property, right? Especially if you are the female in the relationship, because statistics have shown that when it comes to masculinity and femininity, when it comes to these particular type of unions and the separation that happens for whatever reason, as I said, be it in life or be it in death, the statistics has shown that women are often the ones on the outer end of the band that are the ones that are suffering as a result of not having those strong conversations when it was to be had. And I am imploring my females, do not continue in your relationship if you have not yet done so without having the conversation. No, it doesn't mean you need to go deep into the conversation, but have it. Have it as a starting point so that if at some point in time you acquire a particular asset, as I said, an asset of a particular value, and you have contributed to it in some way, maybe you put down the deposit, maybe you're not completing the entire balance, but your contribution counts for something. And because your contribution counts for something, the onus, and I'm going to use the word burden because I want you to feel it to be a burden. The burden is now placed upon you to have the hard conversation of where on this document is my name. And if it's not there, take the steps to get it there. Now, there's always the legal route. And as I said, I won't have any form of hard conversation surrounding what can be legally done, right? But I'll just gloss over it just to give you an idea of some of the legal things that can be done outside of, putting your names on deed, putting your names on bank accounts, keeping your receipts and your evidence. You can ensure that there is a will. There is a will or some trust instrument that is being created to protect your rights, right? You can formulate some form of cohabitation agreement just to ensure it, or something in the form of a contract that explains what assets belong to who and what apportionment they are to be, divided, right? It always helps, guys, and I repeat this, my extraordinaires. It always helps to get legal advice. And the legal advice that you will get is always going to be case by case. It's going to be dependent on your own unique circumstance. So while I'll give you just the nuggets and the keys to start the provoking thought, remember that's what we do beyond in these Beyond Ordinary series. It's to get your mind thinking and addressing your mind to what could potentially happen in instances where you're not necessarily approaching life or understanding the ebbs and flow that life comes with. So I'll always say to you, get legal advice for your particular circumstance, right? And the reason for doing that, as I've mentioned, in my area of law and also in my general social, landscape and space, I have seen far too many of my friends and my colleagues go through instances where a partner has passed away and they are left having the children of the partner coming to the space, sell the house, the car, take the benefits from the insurance policy, take everything, and have left them with only bills. They are without protection, but they have the financial burden to bear. And because they did not have these things in place, be it whether they had some form of cohabitation agreement, whether they had some form of will, whether there was some assets that they were jointly owned on, whatever it is that was not in place, these things come at the end of the day and they bite us, particularly so the female of the species. And the conversation, of course, are hard conversations to have, and I won't pretend like the conversations aren't hard to have. because most of these common law situations or visiting relationship, they are often love bound. They're often emotionally driven. And so to have the conversation about what belongs to me and what apportionment it belongs to me within is oftentimes conversations that persons in love don't want to have. But guys, you have to love smart. Ladies and gentlemen, you have to love smart. Now I keep making reference to the female because, as I said, the statistics have shown that we are the ones who suffer the most in these kind of situations. But we are not unaware that men may come into these instances as well. So, gentlemen, ladies, love smart. And loving smart means sometimes asking the hard questions, putting people to task, making them do the things that will secure your future. It's just as simple as that. And sometimes if you need a third party to come involved, some form of negotiating party or some mediating party, just to make sure that your interest is protected, that may be what you need to take on board. So I just wanted to drop this in your spirit because since the latter part of the third quarter of the year, my case files have grown significantly when it comes to common law situation. As I said, in my jurisdiction and in my country, and I think by my accent you all know where I'm from, right? In my jurisdiction and in my country, my caseload has significantly grown in terms of this particular area. And I'm going to take it outside of the realm of law because I'm not here to do the lawyering thing. But certainly within my friend circle, I have had quite a number of my friends come to me and say, boy, this is happening now, and I feel like I feel naked. I feel like I didn't do what I needed to have done to clothe myself with that protective blanket. And it resonated so deeply with me because in most of these instances, these women are intelligent women. They are top performers in the corporate world. They are in the Fortune 500 companies. They are themselves professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers. And they also are faced with these hard, not wanting to have these hard conversations. And then, in the alternative, finding themselves within these kinds of spaces and places. So, we know love is emotional. We know love takes over. But the law, your rights, your protection is a practical place to lean from. Yeah? And I don't want any of you to confuse commitment with security because somebody will be committed to you for years and they do not offer you the security and protection that you deserve to have. So do not confuse when somebody commits to you by coming home and sharing the same roof and sharing a same car. Do not confuse that with you having security and protection because it absolutely isn't. Yeah? And for me, if your partner really cares about you, you may not even have to ask these questions. They will happen as a natural process in the relationship. Hi babe, I'm buying a car. You want to contribute the deposit? Hi babe, we're buying a house. Can you get 50% of the mortgage? If your partner truly cares about the relationship and cares about you and your rights and your security and your protection, these will be conversations that flow like water through your pipe. Trust and believe. I've heard the stories, I've been there, and it's nothing that is hard to have when the person is not just thinking of love, but is thinking of the practical side of love. And as I said, loving smartly. So in closing, my extraordinaires, ring or no ring, protect what's yours. Respect what's theirs. And find a way to build together. And that's my little moment that I wanted to drop in your spirit. Just something for you to think about and to have deeper discussions. And I hope at the end of this, you would have done the right thing by saying to your spouse, let's have a talk. And if this was interesting to you, always I ask you, consider subscribing, consider liking, sharing, commenting, and of course, always turn your notification bells on. See when I drop something, I may drop something that is speaking directly to you. It may be a church sermon. You know, every time you go to church and you think this sermon is directly about me, it may just be that for you. So turn on your notification bell, know when I have something to say, and it may just be what needs to be heard by you. So my extraordinaires, thank you as always. It has been a fabulous time thus far, dropping you the nuggets, sharing with you, getting the comments. I have now gotten a couple of comments and persons who DM me directly and say, hey, good one. So to keep those coming and to help us along the way in our beyond ordinary journey, let's do what we need to do within our lives to secure our future, secure our property, secure our rights, and to secure our ability to be informed. So, as always, take care, and we'll see you on the other side of being extraordinary.